Swan, and this is being recorded because I forgot to hit record. So thank you to my team who helped me do that. I am Jen Swan Kilpatrick. I am the Executive Director at Art Services, located here in Buffalo, serving the 5 counties of Western New York. And our ASI team is here with us as well today. We're really excited to bring you this webinar. ASI has partnered with Americans for the Arts to release Arts and Economic Prosperity 6. As many of you know, we were able to bring Randy Cohen in person here to Western New York back in early February. So really, we're really excited to have this opportunity because for anyone who couldn't attend any of those multiple presentations that we had in February, this was a really great opportunity to continue to invite people here to hear the presentation, find out about the data, ask Randy all of your questions, and really continue that great conversation around the numbers and the arts and culture economic impact in Western New York. And if you're not familiar with ASI, and this is your first interaction with us, we are a nonprofit ourselves, and we are a service agency to nonprofit arts and cultural organizations and artists in the 5 counties of Western New York. And so advocacy is one of the pillars that we do, including this Arts and Economic Prosperity Report. But we also have a variety of different services and supports like grant funding, professional development, arts access, and really just connecting all of you either in or out of the arts and cultural sector to other opportunities, and really just lifting up the entire sector as a whole. So happy to have you all here. We have a really great group today. Little background on how we got to Arts and Economic Prosperity 6. Back in 2022, actually even before that, ASI was committed to doing Arts and Economic Prosperity 6. The timeline itself got pushed a little bit. It was supposed to be released a little earlier, but obviously due to the pandemic and many of those changes, the report was pushed back. But a lot of great data and results that we have to share, even though we're several years after a pandemic, right? So that's really great news to see. In 2022, and a little bit into 2023, the team at ASI collected and worked with hundreds of local arts and cultural organizations in both getting them to complete organizational surveys to report back on their data, so revenue spent, expenses, and then also on the flip side, our team went out and collected close to 800 audience surveys from hundreds of arts and cultural events. We got to go to a lot of great events. Many of you welcomed us into your spaces, so we're very grateful for that. So that's really how we were able to collect that data. And then Americans for the Arts and their team really crunched that data and made sense of it. So that's where we are today. So thank you all for being participants. If your organization participated in that, being supporters, and knowing that you are the true reason that arts and economic prosperity exist, because without you, we don't have that data. And without that data, we don't really see that total impact of the sector. So thanks to the ASI team, thanks to the sector. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our special guest, Randy Cohen. He is the VP of Research at Americans for the Arts. Randy?
Thank you, Jen, and thank you, everybody. Happy Friday, and great to be back with you. We had such a good visit 2 months ago. I just loved it, and we covered a lot of cities, and really shared the good news story. And that's what we're going to talk about today, a good news story, and we're going to expand the way we talk about the arts. We all obviously appreciate how the arts inspire us and bring us delight and joy and make us feel creative and create more livable communities. And young people with an education rich in the arts are performing better academically. When the arts are part of our healing and healthcare, we get better faster, and it helps us attract workforce and strengthen our creative economy. And we're going to start today. We're going to actually cover a bunch of areas, but we're going to focus today initially on this Arts and Economic Prosperity study. And then we're really going to work on filling our quiver of case-making arrows and talk about arts advocacy as well. So, economic impact is just one way to talk about the arts, but it's a really important one. Tell you, if I were some extra, we've been talking about, space and sun and everything, some extraterrestrial from outer space, here on Earth to advocate for the arts, take me to your leader. Oh, yeah, Jen, give me one talking point for the arts. I'd make it an economic talking point because, you talk to elected leaders and ask them their three priorities. They'll typically tell you, well, jobs, jobs, and jobs. So we're going to connect our arts and culture product to what's their priority, because that's going to help us generate more government funding and private sector funding, which then we need to help make sure everyone in our communities has the opportunity to participate, to engage in the arts, that every child's receiving a quality arts education. So, like I said, we've got a good news story. Before I tell that story, I just want to acknowledge that we are all here today. And it has been an incredibly rough couple years for the arts in our communities all across the country. The pandemic put the arts in its worst position in literally in generations. 99% of arts and culture organizations had to suspend operations or cancel performances. Many of them closed and never reopened. Johns Hopkins University, they track employment at all nonprofits in the United States. There's about 1.6 million nonprofit organizations out there. Maybe 110,000 of those are arts and culture nonprofits. Our arts nonprofits lost jobs at 5 times the rate of all nonprofits. Brutal, right? And even the Bureau of Economic Analysis at the Department of Commerce, they did this huge sweeping study looking at the impact of the pandemic on the nation's economy. And of course, they study hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of industries. And we all heard about tourism and lodging, and, airlines took it on the chin and everything. But they called out the arts, and specifically the performing arts, as among the several most devastated injured industries. I guess the word fits there, right? But we're bouncing back. We're back in business, and we're rebuilding. Audiences are working their way back. Interestingly, though, not every arrow was pointing downward for the arts during the pandemic. There was one that was crazy upward, and that was personal participation in the arts, people making art, music, crafts, and, expansively defined culinary, that type of thing. So when people couldn't necessarily get out to get to the arts, they were finding a way to do it themselves, which I just think is a fabulous finding about the central role of the arts in our lives. Amazon, was writing these articles about this mysterious spike in ukulele sales. I do a big public opinion survey every couple of years, and so I did it last summer. And 37% of the nation's population, a third of the population, said, "Yeah, I tried some kind of new arts, culture, craft, music, creative type of undertaking during the pandemic." So it's really something. How many loaves of sourdough bread were left on your doorstep? The last couple of years. So lots of that happening. So I can see the chat. I don't know. Anybody want to write in? Typically, a third of this group here, statistically, must have tried something. Anybody try something new that they want to share during the pandemic? You can just type it in the chat. We can share that. And all right. So we got open the studio. Nice. That's great. Ooh, nice. Online vintage shop. So I've heard people write their book, open a dance organization. That's excellent. So many things were closing. So learn the guitar. Nobody said they bought a ukulele yet, but I'm guessing that's in there somewhere. So yeah, keep sharing. This is sort of fun to see. We've had people write novels and take up different art forms and things. So I actually personally. I took up knitting during the pandemic. I'd always wanted to try. My grandmother, my aunts always knit. I always just loved the clickety clack of the needles, just it was just such a neat thing. And after I watched everything on Hulu and Netflix. I didn't want to get off the couch, but knew I had to do something else. And so I ordered the supplies on Amazon, in fact, and a neighbor taught me how to do it, and I YouTubed it and started knitting. But I got to tell you, and it'd be interesting if people found this experience as well. Um, it was so grounding. If we just remember, the uncertainty that was on the other side, is there another side to this pandemic? Is there a place for me in it? I couldn't knit and worry about the future at the same time. It really just was very meditative and brought me to a very peaceful place. And of course, that's one of the things that the arts do, right? When we immerse ourselves in the arts. I'm not very good. I make the world's longest scarves, but eventually it was time to get out of the house again, post pandemic. And so I'm in the DC area, Americans for the Arts, and we got a lot of museums, of course, around here. So my wife and I were thought, well, let's get out and let's try a museum. Might be a good first place. And now that I am a fiber artist, that's a laugh line, so it's okay to laugh here. But we've got a great textile museum in Washington, D.C. And so we thought, well, let's try that. We'd never been to the textile museum. And so the first thing we did is we went online and we found their website and they were open. Yay. And saw their hours, their safety protocols, wear your mask, keep your distance, and read about some of the exhibitions they had going and thought, this is perfect. Let's do it. And clicked another button, bought our tickets online, pulled out the credit card. And so we were all good to go. Saturday comes, we jump in the car, we drive downtown, and we park in a parking garage. $10, get my stub from the guy, right? And on the way to the museum, we stopped and had lunch. Isn't that something when we do when we, have an arts experience, it might be dinner and a show or, we have a meal or something like that. And so there's a wonderful restaurant downtown DC, and it's called Founding Farmers, and it's a farm to fork place and really good. We spent $70. Wasn't a cheap lunch, but we were out. It was great to be out. After the lunch, we walked about 6 blocks to the museum, and we got at the museum, and it's beautiful modern architecture, and we went in and we got our program and paper and kind of read a little bit more about what we're going to see. And but I got to tell you, my first sensory experience being at that museum really wasn't the 1,000-year-old tapestry. They've got those amazing, or the quilt exhibition they had going. Um, it was the air conditioning, because this was August in Washington, D.C., and it was about 1,000 degrees outside. And, I got in there, all I could think was like, oh my God, I already love this place. And I've seen nothing. So, and then we spent a really lovely afternoon and we saw the exhibitions, a talk by a curator and a couple other things, spent some money at the gift shop on the way out. So hit pause there and kind of roll the tape back a couple of days. Think of all the industries that were touched just by this simple Randy gets back to a museum story. Well, it started earlier in the week when we went online and checked the museum's website. We've all got websites, right? Arts organizations have websites. That means arts organizations also pay web designers and computer programmers, and we pay connectivity fees. We also paid to have the content developed, and on the site. And there's photography, and we bought our tickets online. So now you got the finance and the e-commerce people involved in this whole transaction. And then from there, we drove downtown and we parked in a parking garage. I can tell you that part of Washington, D.C., during the week, you can't get a spot. It is just business, business, business. On the weekend, not so much. If it wasn't for those arts organizations, that parking garage would surely be closed. That guy that gave me the stub at the parking lot attendant, that is a job. There's companies that own and manage those parking garages. So they're all of a sudden seeing some of this benefit. And then it was off to the restaurant. They grow everything within 50 miles, and so it's all fresh and delicious. Some of my $70 is going to those local producers of the food and the produce. And there's a trucking company. I asked, well, yeah, every morning, we get a delivery. So there's even that part of the business. The waiters getting some personal income, the owner of the restaurant, some entrepreneurial income. And then finally, it was off to the museum. And you ever notice when you go to an arts event, you're always getting paper, right? It's a beautifully designed program. Printers make bank. Honestly, if we just right here added up our printing bills, we would have a story next time we go speak to the Rotary Club, because we're always using great coated paper and color and thousands of units. And the air conditioning, I can't imagine what the museum's utility bill is in the summer to keep that place cool. It's got to be huge. So arts organizations, spend all this, we've got all these expenses just keeping our buildings and our facilities going, just like all the other industries out there. Most people don't think about the arts as an industry, if they do at all, until maybe they hear a talk by a curator in the presence of the art, or they see the performers on the stage. But the fact is, we're businesses, and we employ a range of industries, and we generate all this event-related spending. And so that's the story we're going to talk about here with arts and economic prosperity. So hopefully that makes sense. And we've got a great story. This happens, thousands and thousands and thousands of times a day. And now we've got some numbers to back this up. So I am going to share my screen and start talking about the study and the data here. So arts and economic prosperity, and it's an economic impact of study of the nonprofit arts and culture industry, organizations and their audiences. And it's there's Western New York, one of 373 studies in one of 373 communities across all 50 states as part of this study. Everybody catch that technical effect? Yeah, that was all me. Thank you. So we study communities as small as 4,000 people, as large as 4 million people. You know what? Even in a small rural community, if the arts are happening there, economic impact is happening there as well. All right, a little bit about what we studied. So I mentioned nonprofit arts and culture organizations. So yes, our nonprofit organizations, but sometimes in our smaller or under-resourced or rural communities, sometimes it might be a municipally owned performing arts center or a state-owned museum or a program at a library or even a social service organization, that's connecting the community to the artist. So we would include all of that in this study. What's not included is Hollywood motion picture industry, commercial art galleries, architecture, publishing firms, all an important part of our cultural ecology, just not part of this study. And why is that? Not because they're unimportant, but typically when government and public sector invests in the arts, that's where those dollars are going, to that nonprofit arts and culture sector. And it's an appropriate question to ask. What's the public's ROI on that, right? What's the community benefit? Obviously, everyone will stipulate community, cultural benefits, but now we can also talk about economic benefits. We take, so it's nonprofit. We take a very reliable approach to economic impact. Got a team of economists. We use what's called a IMPLAN platform. And what you really need to know about this is the same economic analysis system subscribed to by over 1,000 cities in the United States. It enables us to customize an economic impact study for the Western New York region. And we do that because $50 spent in your community is going to have a different economic impact than $50 spent in my community. Very localized findings. Third, it's a very conservative study that we take. Um, and we surveyed, ASI did a great job gathering audience and organizational data. We surveyed over 200 organizations, actually over 500 organizations, heard back from 145 of them. And that's what we go with. We only use data from the organizations that provide it. We don't make estimates for non-respondents. So every dollar we talk about today, we could put our hands on and know that there's a lot more out there. All right, so what do we actually find? Total economic activity, and this is for 2022, and this is just in the Western New York region. This isn't statewide or nationally. Total economic activity was $381.4 million. That is a huge amount of money. And that figure is composed of two numbers. First, spending by the organizations themselves. This is, and just the 145 organizations, $192 million. Arts organizations are businesses. This shows it. We employ people locally. We purchase goods and services from other businesses in the community, right? Remember the printer, remember the air conditioning, and on and on and on, right? We live these expenditures, we live these budgets. But you know what? It's not an intuitive way to think about the arts. And so nobody thinks about this until we tell them. We're members of the Chamber of Commerce. We help drive tourism and market our region. Arts organizations are good business citizens. Now, like any business, they have an economic impact. So does the dog catcher's office, so does a gas station. However, few industries generate that kind of event related spending that the arts do, and that's, it's a meal, it's parking, it's babysitting, it might be travel and lodging to go to that arts event. Tally up the spending by the attendees, and by the way, 4.2 million attendees just at those organizations, and it's $189.4 million. So what's the big dollar figure we're talking about? Right there at the top, $381.4 million. Now, what's the economic impact of that? Well, we talked about how important jobs are. And so the first thing we look at is jobs. 8,221 jobs supported across the 5-county region. Little something about arts jobs. These are necessarily local jobs. Ours is not an industry that's going to be offshored. We need the curators hanging the arts. We need the performers on the stage. We need the arts educators in the schools, the arts therapists, in the hospitals. These are local jobs. And remember, arts organizations employ more than just artists. We also employ, we've all got accountants and auditors, and we've got, facilities. We have electricians and plumbers and security staff and, marketing people and box office people. So we support industries throughout the community. Those are all part of this. And of course, there's also those hospitality dollars, that waiter, that parking garage attendant. Those are included here as well. Bottom line, arts, not just food for the soul, putting food on the table for 8,221 households right in the 5-county region. We also look at government revenue. $121 million in local, state, and federal government revenue. A lot of our elected leaders and community and business leaders, like, yes, of course it's important to fund the arts, but in their mind, they see those dollars as sort of like on a one-way ride out of town. But what this shows is that it's actually an investment that brings revenue back to the community that those communities need to pay for, critical, vital services. Small investment, big returns. That's the arts. So just jobs and government revenue together it shows that when we invest in the arts, we're not investing in a frill or an extra or, pouring those dollars down some black hole of goodness, giving back economic benefits to the community. So now let's take a look at the typical audience spending, because this is really the value added aspect of the arts. So 794 attendees surveyed at a whole range of events, performing, visual, free, festivals, the whole bit. The typical attendee spends $45 per person per event, not including the cost of admission. And actually, $45 even. I think we ran the numbers a couple times. I hate when it's a perfectly even number, but it's 45.00. So there it is. Um, and you can see how these pieces of the pie break out. You'll notice none of them are admission. We actually capture admission in the survey, by the way, but those dollars are going to you, the organization, and then you, the organization, are spending those in the community. So this way we don't double count it. So that's how we've decided to calculate this. That means every time one of those 4.2 million attendees goes to an arts event, $45 are going somewhere to local merchants in the community. And you can see, on the left, you got, there was my $70 lunch, and local transportation, that's parking. And some of you might be looking at lodging, like, where in the state can you still get a room for $4.16? And would you want it if you could get it? No, you wouldn't. This is an average, right? Not everybody's got a hotel cost. I'll just say this: nationally, we did 224,000 audience intercept surveys. So you hear some amazing stories when you ask about other. One of my favorites was a farmer in Wisconsin who paid somebody $60 to milk his cows so he could go to the theater that night. Isn't that great? People are doing what it takes to get to the arts. Um, in addition to how much did you spend at this arts event, we also asked folks for their zip code because we want to find out, do they live in the 5 county region, which would make them local, or are they from outside the 5 county region? 10% of attendees came from outside the 5 county region. And do they spend differently? Yeah, you bet they do. Look at that, almost double the average. The typical non-local attendee, $88.86 per person per event, not including admission. And that's, you see more on food, more on, transportation. And, that's where you see the lodging for the most part. So those 10% of attendees from outside the county, 27% of them had a lodging cost. They average $202 per person per event. So you get that head in a bed, right? That's when the cash registers really start ringing. Your tourism and economic development people are going to love this segment of the program here because you're pulling in the outside dollars. Now, we asked those non-local attendees a question, which was, why are you here? We're glad you're here. Thanks for coming. Are you here on business? You're here visiting friends and family? Two very common reasons people travel. 67% of the attendees said, we came specifically for this arts event. So you could really see the pulling power that the arts have in bringing people to the community. So when we invest in the arts, we're not investing in some more gruel please industry or needy charity. It's an economic industry, and it's putting heads in beds and cheeks in seats, and derrieres and cafe chairs. If you are a local business, you love this vibrant arts community. All right. Now, it's, hey, it's Friday, right? We might be thinking about what to do this weekend, and, down to 3 options. Which one's going to have the best economic impact tonight? Is probably the question that nobody asked ever. But so we also asked the attendees a little bit more about what the arts mean to you. And these are amazing numbers. Between 80 and 90% of attendees said this arts and culture event is a source of pride and community identity. Similar percentage, I'd feel a sense of loss if this were no longer available to me and my community. And I think one of the most interesting ones is at the bottom there. 9 in 10 attendees said it's important to me that this event or this venue be available for future generations. And what that tells me is that arts and culture is not this one-time transactional experience. We do it and poof, it's gone. But rather, it goes deeper. It's about our history, our heritage. Where our community's been, where it is, where we're going. So these are findings observed by folks in the region, outside the region. And so, the arts have a meaningful connection to folks in your communities. All right. So, by the way, as you probably know by now, this report, it's a 58-page report. Everything I'm talking about is available, and the report is on the ASI website. So, you want to know about more about any of this, you can dig in there. It's really clearly written. It's a very manageable read. Um, One of the other things we asked, that's what we asked audiences. We asked the arts organizations about volunteerism. And the volunteer army is just what helps keep our arts industry going, viable, and serving our community. Um, just the responding organizations, over 11,000 volunteers that contributed 347,000 hours. And because we're commodifying everything, today for this presentation, you can actually put a dollar value on the average volunteer hour in New York State. It's $35.71, according to the independent sector. And that's a national organization in DC that researches volunteerism and nonprofits. And so that means there's a $12.4 million value in volunteerism. Now that $12.4 million is not part of the 381 I talked about earlier, because no dollars are actually changing hands here, but this is how important it is to put it, you can put a value on it and use that $35.71 figure, and you can calculate volunteer value of your own organization as well. When you download the report and sort of turn it to the back side, on the back cover, you're going to see a bunch of national partners on your study. And, so I'm in Washington, D.C., which is the land of national organizations. There's so many national organizations in DC. There's actually a national organization for the national organizations. But you can make this work for you because, look, you see like the U.S. Conference of Mayors or National Association of Counties or International City County Management Association. Our elected and appointed government leaders, they've got national associations as well. And your tourism people, they go to Destinations International, your cultural advancement organizations, like Race Forward, all partners on your economic impact study, because one, they too believe arts, culture, fundamental component of a healthy community, and they buy into the methodology and they buy into the results. Trust me, you can feel very confident using these data. So when you go and you're making the case to your mayor, your county commissioner, your city manager, your state legislator, talk about this study, but then look at the back and say, look, your national organization's on board with this. We're not just making this up. So that's a really tool to help your credibility, and the efficacy of your advocacy. The public gets this as well. So back to that big national public opinion survey, I talked about, 86% in the American population says, yeah, the arts make, and create more livable communities. That's not a surprise. However, 79% of the public agrees arts, good for local jobs, good for local economy and local businesses. When we tell our art story, it resonates with people. So, but we got to tell it first. Because again, remember, I'll say this a couple times, economic impact of the arts is not an intuitive way to think about the arts. We think about them as, a wonderful community amenity. And we are. But the fact is, remind people that, yeah, well, $45 per person per event. People are like, oh yeah, definitely. I did that much. I spent more than that alone on dinner, So when we remind people of the impact, it registers for them. So $381 million, it's a huge industry, but there's actually a strategies that you can make your own economic impact figures, right? And so if you go to page 26 of the report, you're going to find the Arts and Economic Prosperity Calculator. And all you need are two figures: total spending and your total attendance. And you'll be able to calculate your organization's economic impact. So then you're writing your proposals, we're transforming lives and communities and neighborhoods. Here's our economic impact. You'll be able to provide your own data story. And like Jen said, we only do this study every 5 years. You're welcome. We're all relieved by that. You can update your numbers every year, and I'm sure Jen and the team, the year ahead will be emailing everybody asking for those two numbers. Hey, it's not a survey. It's not a survey. Just give me two numbers, and then even the region, ASI will be able to update the figures. So that's arts and economic prosperity, the economic impact of nonprofit arts and culture industries. And, it shows we are, a jobs industry. We are good for the economy. And that's the story we've got to tell. Now, we focus just on that nonprofit sector in this, and like we talked about in the beginning, but we also know that there's so much more out there, right? So I want to flip now to a second study that is done by the US Bureau of Economic Analysis, top economic shop on the planet. Now, we've been doing these studies for 30 years, and we focused on the nonprofit for all those reasons we talked about. But so the federal government does the Arts and Cultural Production Satellite account, and actually just days ago they updated their numbers for 2022, and nationally, and so they've widened the lens. Yes, nonprofits, but also Hollywood Motion Pictures, university drama departments, architecture, publishing, individual artists, gig workers, import export, design in gaming design, any arts dollar they can find in the US economy, they pulled it out. Nationally, $1.1 trillion industry in this country, 4.3% of the nation's economy. And what's great is they actually also do state versions of this now. And you can see there in the headline, I'm sure you looked at it already. New York State in 2022, $151 billion industry. That is 7.4% of the state's economy, over 461,000 jobs. Is that a lot or a little? It's a lot. It's one of the biggest percentages in the country and largest dollar values. That's bigger than construction, bigger than education, bigger than transportation, bigger than retail. So when you go and you're talking to your legislators about the importance of funding the arts, and you kind of get that line like, well, I'm good on the arts, but we got to focus on jobs in the economy right now. The arts are a jobs industry. The arts, are good for the economy. And here's another finding that's emerged from this research. There is a causal relationship between a growth in arts jobs and a growth in all employment. So when arts jobs go up, all employment goes up. So if you got somebody concerned about jobs, and we know they all are, invest in the arts. And one reason of that is because the arts diversify the economy. Remember, we talked about all those different industries, that we support, as part of our work, whether we're an artist or an arts organization. That's part of the rationale there. Also, the arts, they can do well when other, sectors of the economy aren't. So there's some really good reasons there. Powerful, powerful numbers. The second thing to say about this is the very fact that they do this study is a story in itself, because the BEA, they study, hundreds and hundreds of industries, but they only do a couple dozen of these satellite accounts. And so it's got to be for some kind of, national interest. And that national interest is economically, how do you prosper in this world? We're in an innovation economy. And to innovate, you got to be creative. And it's an understanding that to be, arts and culture drives creativity, creativity drives innovation. So if you want more innovation, push on arts and culture. The business world actually understands this as well. So we work, and actually the conference board is the organization. They're also a national, they're also a partner organization on your AEP study. And the conference board is the National Organization for Big Business in the United States. And, that's where the Fortune 1000 CEOs go to for business information. Their research shows that creativity is now among the top 5 applied skills that business leaders are looking for. It's even leapfrog the 3 R's. Well, of course, you have to be able to read, write, and do arithmetic. But if you could also take some creativity and apply that to your scientific, your engineering, your coding knowledge, those are the innovation jobs we're all trying to create and attract to our communities, right? In this study, Ready to Innovate, and you can just Google it, you'll find it. 85% of business leaders say creativity, I'm sorry, back up. 72% of business leaders say creativity is of high importance in hiring. 85% of that group says they're struggling to find the people they're looking for. And, so there's no typing test for creativity, right? And so, these business scholars ask these business leaders, all right, well, how do you know when you've got a creative person across the table from you there? And there were two indicators way at the top: starting your own business, entrepreneurial activity, and two, study of the arts, especially while in college. And they write in the conclusion of this report, it's clear that the arts, music, drawing, drama, dance, literature, media, provide skills sought by employers of the third millennium. So super important. And this is kind of what this looks like in action. We used to have the chair of our board at Americans for the Arts was a banker, big time banker, because the same time he was chair of our board, he was also chair of the American Banking Association board. And he would talk about how he always asked the people he was interviewing about their connection, their relation to the arts, because for him, it was a proxy for creativity. Oh, then he'd say, I don't want creative bank tellers, but everybody else though, I want to be creative. So Ready to Innovate, and this is really compelling information to the business community. And of course, this makes the case for the importance of arts education, which I just think is one of the most important things we could be doing these days and advocating for. The research is so clear that when the arts are part of a young person's education, they have better grade point averages, better standardized test scores, lower dropout rates. And those are findings that cut across all socioeconomic strata. So every child stands to benefit from an arts education. And it's also important to remember that this arts education isn't just about creating the next generation of musicians and artists and everybody and performers. It's just about creating more well-rounded, engaged people in our communities. So that's very important as well. And then this is some of the benefit. This is what this looks like in action. So this happy-looking guy is a Stanford University researcher. A few years back, got the Nobel Prize for medicine, and the reporter called him up and is like, "Professor, who was your most influential teacher?" And I'm sure they were ready to hear some, story. I'll always remember my high school biology teacher. And actually, without missing a beat, he said, I owe it all to my bassoon teacher. And he went on to describe how it was his arts education that gave him the habits of mind that made him a great scientist. Pattern recognition, perseverance, problem identification, problem solving, and ability to deal with, multiple solutions and ambiguous findings and all of that. And so, and the research shows that may not be a unique situation. There's a Michigan State University researcher named Robert Root Bernstein, Root-Bernstein, and he's studied creativity his whole career, and he's a MacArthur Genius Award winner and all that kind of thing. One of the things he and his team did is they studied all the scientists. I'm sorry, all the Nobel winners in the sciences. And looked at their level of arts involvement and compared them to scientists in two scientific societies, one in the US, one in the UK. Nobel laureates, 17 times more likely to be actively involved as artists, as arts maker, as musician, as painter. So something's going on there. I want to add another arrow to your quiver here. Now, you can just start to tell I'm just pulling the issues off the front page, right? But these are the way the arts are strengthening our communities. And but it's also got an economic angle because everything's about economics today. Healthcare. Healthcare is rapidly, on its way to becoming 20% of the nation's economy. But the research is so powerful about the benefits to us as individuals and to the economy um, of the arts. So I've got a arts background, I've theater background and duh, right? It's probably apparent by now, but I also have a medical research background. I worked at Stanford University. I worked at Scripps Clinic and Research Foundation in La Jolla, California. Um, when I was at Scripps, every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, we used to have live chamber music in the lobby. And it was amazing. Four musicians could just really transform the space. And patients could walk in, they could be wheeled in and bring their families. Staff was allowed if we were able to break away. Um, and what we started to notice as medical staff is that the patients we'd see in their rooms clinically lethargic, depressed, even if you got a view of the ocean, and everybody there did, nobody wants to be in the hospital. But in the presence of the music, you could see physical transformation in people. Eyes got less cloudy, their posture got better. You could sense a greater awareness of the environment around them. And we used to think like something's happening here. It's like they're getting an IV drip of the arts. Well, there's this growing body of research now that shows when the arts are part of our healing, we have shorter hospital visits, fewer doctor visits, less medication, less depression. Evidence that it saves money, reduces staff and nursing turnover. So all these benefits that the arts also provide our healthcare community. And we were part of a big international research study during the pandemic, during which time mental health issues tripled. The Census Bureau tracks mental health issues in the United States. People who had a half hour a day of experiencing the arts somehow, watching, making, creating, expressing, and it was sort of big umbrella, right? It could be, culinary, it could be gardening, some kind of expressive experience. Lower rates of anxiety, lower rates of depression, higher rates of life satisfaction. So these are all these other benefits and ways we're strengthening our community. And then something else, that was a problem before the pandemic and got even worse during, our times of isolation and loneliness. The arts are unifying communities and building empathy. I heard a term recently. We have a crisis of certainty in the United States right now, where you got people at the ends, of the opinion and political spectrums who are so certain of their positions, they're just not listening, they're just not connecting, they're just not looking for, common ground. And the arts, the research shows builds empathy and understanding. 72% of the American public says the arts create opportunities for shared experiences with people of different race, ethnicity, age, or faith. 63%. The arts help me understand other cultures in my community. So we're benefiting the arts that way there also. So let me wrap up here, start to wrap up real quick. You're looking at a picture from Paris in 1913. Bad news at the Louvre. The Mona Lisa was stolen. Took them 2 years to get it back. That's where it had been hanging. In the 2 years the Mona Lisa was missing, more people went to see where it had been hanging than saw the painting itself in the previous 14 years. It's so easy to take arts and culture for granted, to assume our communities are always going to have artists and be served by our arts organizations. But we've got to be advocates. We got to be relentless advocates for the arts and get everybody else to build that habit of arts advocacy as well. So let me just give you a real quick rundown on advocating, because obviously there's the big book of advocacy, there's a whole library on lobbying. I break it down to three simple questions. What's the message? Who gets the message? And who delivers the message? What's the message? We've been talking about messages all hour here, right? Arts, it's a jobs industry, economic development, tourism driver, 21st century workforce. Arts is good for education and kids and learning and healthcare. On the ASI website, you'll find 10 reasons to support the arts. It's a one pager. Download that, put it in your pocket, never take it out of your pocket. That is your message guide forever. Um, so lots of messages. The second question that actually requires a little more research on your part. Who gets the message? And we've all got decision makers in our environment, right? It might be and a legislative body or a mayor. And what do those people care about? What does the mayor talk about in all of her speeches? And, this legislator, I said, yeah, they all care about the economy, but actually they may care more about mental health or something like that. So identify those people, find out what they care most about, lead with that. But remember to be able to talk about all the other stuff because, they always surprise you. And then the third one, which I think sometimes is the most important one, who delivers the message? Um, and when I go to Capitol Hill, they get me up there a couple times a year and give briefings to members of Congress and their staff. But they see me coming a mile away, right? They know what I'm there for. Guys cover up their wallets, ladies lock their purse in a drawer. But if I can bring a business leader and an artist and a hospital CEO and a member of the military to talk about the value of the arts to them and their community and their work, totally changes the conversation, right? Um, and we've all got those people in our community. A few years back, we had the mayor of Mesa, Arizona, on a panel, and he was talking about the arts and how it was budget hearing night for the arts. And so it was him, the mayor, the city council, and 60 people lined up to advocate, do their 3 minutes for the arts. And he said, I noticed though that the chief of police was there that night, which in itself wasn't unusual, but he was in total chief of police regalia, hat, tie, medals. He said that was a little unusual. And after everybody else had done their 3 minutes, he asked for 3 minutes and said, if you got to take a cut out of the arts budget, I'd rather you just took it out of my public safety budget because when they do their job well, it makes my job easier. I mean, you can imagine if we had 1,000 police chiefs on that message, right? So and then remember the golden rule of advocacy: no numbers without a story, no stories without a number. We're the arts, we're full of stories and good news. And, it might be how, our child was transformed by the arts, or a neighborhood, was energized economically and, became a destination, or, all the people I employ in my organization, all the industries, prison attendee. Yeah, you know what? $45 every time I go to an arts event. So tell your story and tell the economic story again and again and again. This is not a one and done. Everything you do to advance the arts is important. You're important for doing it. And remember, the arts aren't just nice, they're necessary. So thank you. And I will stop there, and got a few minutes left for some questions if anyone has any, or concerns. I challenge that. So
Thanks, Randy. As we give people a moment here to collect their thoughts or comments or questions, you can either put your question in the chat or unmute if you want to do that. But as you're kind of thinking around that, I do want to mention I did put a link in the chat. We have this information on the ASI website, as Randy mentioned. So we have the calculator. We actually, Kelsey from our team did an abbreviated report of the very large AEP6 report. So at our in-person events, we had that that we were distributing out. So that's available electronically on that website, and also the full in-depth report as well.
yeah. So I saw one question, and it was about how do you position the arts in this environment, and to the business community, given all their struggles and COVID and their challenges with the economy and everything. I would get back to that 21st century workforce piece and ready to innovate, because their biggest issue is How do I attract and retain workforce? And workers these days, here's what we hear globally. And I got to tell you, I hear this in so many communities, in so many words. Our number one export is highly educated young people. Devastating, right? So but what they're hearing from those workers, like when they ask, like, wait, before you leave, what would keep you here? The answer is the same. Look, you want me to be innovative and creative in the workplace? I'm a creative person. I want arts and culture in my community. I want festivals and maker spaces. I want my kids to have access to arts education. Um, and that's this is a phenomenon, now it's a global phenomenon. So that's something that business leaders need to pay attention to, because that's what's attracting workers. So I would lead with that. So
Thanks, Randy. I see that Daryl has a hand up if you would like to unmute and ask your question.
Perfect. Thank you. I don't have so much a question, it's just a comment. I just really appreciate how much data we have here, because I feel like it hits at so many things that I feel like as artists, we all intuitively understood about the arts, but it was really hard to communicate that to people that aren't deep within the arts themselves. So it's very helpful to have all of these numbers backed up by all of these national organizations as well that also resonate with this data. So I think it's going to be incredibly helpful, especially in our region in Western New York. And I'll just add, the timing of this couldn't be more perfect, because we're speaking with a local foundation on Monday for a panel presentation. So a lot of this is going to be brought up during that, just to kind of hopefully seal the deal for some funding. But thank you so much for your work on this.
thanks, Daryl, and be sure to download that 10 Reasons to Support the Arts in Western New York in 2024 and bring that along, because I
Will
guarantee
do.
I talk to the foundation community all the time. Even when they love the arts, they're always like, oh man, had no idea.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Good luck.
All right, last chance to ask Randy all of your numbers questions. And Randy makes numbers fun. I don't, he does. So we're a good team.
We are a good team. Well, I just want to say thanks to the ASI team, and Holly and Kelsey, and it's hard to see everybody who else is on there, and Jen, of course, for doing a great job on this study, and really being, just one of the fabulous art service organizations out there. The leadership, especially for such a big region, big footprint, they're looked to by a lot of other art service organizations and aspiring art service organizations for their work. So thank you all for your leadership and great work on AEP again. And they also know where to find me. So if you wake up in the middle of the night like, oh my God, newsflash question, just ping them and they'll get me as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Randy. It's great to have you back virtually as well. We look forward to continuing our work with Americans for the Arts. So throughout the year, everyone will have other information. As Randy said, we won't do another survey for another 5 years, but we will probably touch base about those two updated numbers so we can keep those numbers flowing and have that be relevant. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time. Thanks, Randy. And we'll be in touch and use our web link and reach out to Randy at any time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Appreciate it.